Hello, my name's Anton Loveday and welcome to my first IBUS 212 assignment. The purpose of this assignment is comparing institutional environments from two countries as well as New Zealand's. We will look at their environments from a range of perspectives, mainly focusing on human capital, which is explored mainly through looking at social and technological perspectives, while also using political and legal, economic and environmental viewpoints to gather an assessment of a country's institutional situation. The countries we will be looking at today are the Philippines and Indonesia. The Philippines is a country consisting of thousands of islands located on the southeast coast of Asia, with an approximate population of around 105 million people. The Philippines are home to the 39th largest economy in the world, mainly exporting to Japan, the US, South Korea, and Germany. Indonesia, similarly, is located in Southeast Asia and constitutes of thousands of islands to make up one large country. Indonesia has a population of around 264 million people and is home to the 16th largest economy in the world. Indonesia's main exporters are to China, Japan, the US, and the EU. New Zealand, in comparison, only has a population of around 4.8 million and has the 68th largest economy. Firstly, a socio-cultural view gives us an understanding on the current social situation within the country's institutional environment. One measurement that we're looking at today is the Human Capital Index from the World Bank. This looks at health and education data and measures how likely a generation is at achieving will be at achieving their full potential by adulthood. The Philippines scores a 0.55 out of 1, while Indonesia scores a 0.53. This is both below the world average and means that the likelihood of a baby being born today achieving their full education and health in these countries is only around 50%. New Zealand, on the other hand, scores much higher at 0.77, meaning that their generations have a much higher chance at gaining higher levels of education and health. If we look at the Human Development Index from the UN, furthermore, the Human Development Index from the UN looks at 3 different premises to determine the development of a country. It looks at health factors, education factors, and economic factors. The Philippines ranks 113th, while Indonesia ranks 116th. Both the Philippines and Indonesia have a reasonably poor life expectancy, at just 69 years old. The Philippines labour force has roughly 18% working under $3.10 a day, while Indonesia has 27%. In terms of education, both countries have 12 years of expected schooling. The Philippines has an adult literacy rate of 94% and Indonesia has one of 95%. Comparing this to New Zealand ranks 16th overall in the HDI, with a much higher life expectancy of 82 and 18 years of expected schooling. The World Happiness Report determines the overall happiness in a country. The overall happiness in the Philippines has been increasing for the past few years, and now ranks 69th in the world, increasing each year. Indonesia ranks lower at 92nd, which, although is an increase from 2018, is still much lower than previous years. A technological view focuses on how much labour or capital intensive the institutional environment is. The HDI shows that the Philippines has a labour force participation rate of 62%, however only 30% of this labour force are considered skilled. Indonesia, on the other hand, has a higher labour force participation rate and a higher rate of skilled workers, at 40%. This means that Indonesia has more skilled workers. While New Zealand's labour force participation rate is similar to these 3 countries at 69%, we have a much more skilled percentage of our workforce, at 82% of New Zealand workers being deemed skilled. The Network Readiness Index from the World Economic Forum assesses a country's use of technologies for competitive and well-being purposes. Indonesia ranks higher than the Philippines in the Network Readiness Index, ranking 73rd, while the Philippines ranks 77th. A political and legal viewpoint focuses on the level of political stability in the legal system in a country, and assesses how that may affect the institutional environment within the countries. Both the Philippines and Indonesia score quite lowly on the Corruption Index, which placing them 99th and 89th respectively. Both countries therefore have somewhat high levels of corruption amongst the public sector. New Zealand ranks 2nd in this, being the 2nd least corrupt country in the world. According to the Freedom Index of 2018, India ranks 85th in the world with strong economic freedom but less personal freedom, which may explain the low score in the Happiness Index. The Philippines scored higher, ranking 73rd. Focusing on an economic view, the Philippines economy has been growing significantly in the past 20 years, with their current GDP of $330 billion US, being 4 times the size of it back in 2000. The same can be said for the GDP per capita, which is around $3,800 per head. Indonesia has a much larger GDP at $1 trillion US. However, they do have the same GDP per capita. The Philippines also scores well in employment, with only a 2.5 unemployment rate. Indonesia also has a low unemployment rate, similar to New Zealand. What this indicates, or helps reiterate, is the fact that these economies are currently developing and growing, meaning business is currently booming. Lastly, the Philippines ranks quite low on the World Risk Index, being very susceptible to earthquakes and severe weather. Indonesia does rank higher. While New Zealand may not be less prone to natural disasters, there is a much stricter building codes, safety measures, and emergency institutions set in place to deal with such disasters, as opposed to other countries.